Let me welcome you to Georgia Tech. I'm Ron Hutchins, Chief Technology Officer here at Georgia Tech, although Ed would probably say CTO stands for Chief Troublemaking Officer. And I'm standing up here as Bloomingdale's, the partner, although I'm not going to help you with your fashion today. People ask me sometimes, why is Georgia Tech interested, or Ron, why are you interested in working with the K-12 schools? I'm going to give you a couple of stories. My background is in networking. I've been in networking here at Georgia Tech for about 30 years. And so seeing networks grow and seeing people start to use them in ways that are unique and different has been one of my focus points. Watching the work that we've done with Barrow County, which really started, the roots of it go back to 1994-95, when in this building, before the 96 Olympics, we hosted a demonstration project with Trickham Middle School, Zoo Atlanta, Fernbank Science Center, and Georgia Tech that the governor then came in and witnessed. That project, that demonstration project, then grew into other work with the K-12 schools, and Marshall Chambers and Ed Morrison here were working with us for, I don't know how long it's been, 6 years, 5 years? 4 or 5 years. My interest was in networks because I think good networks are necessary for some of the things we've been trying to do, and I think some of the things in the Direct Discovery Project will show that. But my reason for continuing with the project isn't that. It's some of the stories that we have that come out of the work that we've done over the 4 years. One of my favorites is the parent who stood up in the Barrow County board meeting and said, my daughter was going to go to a coastal college to get a tan, and now she's going to Georgia Tech to get a degree. And that's a fun thing. We've had, before the project, we had very, very few, I don't know how many, students come out of Barrow County to Georgia Tech. And in the past several years, we've had 5 who've come to Georgia Tech, 4 of whom were women. And that's an amazing thing for me to see, is the technologies have given the students courage and curiosity to come from where they are into Georgia Tech, knowing that they can succeed because they've had interactions with our faculty. So I'm not going to say any more except just to say welcome and thank you, and Ed, I appreciate being part of this, and we'll continue on. And I'll introduce Ed Morrison to go with the presentation, and I'll be able to take questions later. So thank you.
My intent is to recognize that this is the end of the day and be as brief as possible. Again, the title up there on the top. I wish I had a screen like this in my game room. That'd be great. 21st Century STEM Collaborations. And this really is about collaboration. And it's all based on a very simple hypothesis that I'm sure as educators you've run into something very similar to this. It's a truth we all know. I first learned this reading the history of Tolstoy when I was about 21 or 22, and somewhere in there he had made a statement that you don't have to teach your kid to ride a bike if all the other kids are riding a bike, just provide one. And so that really hooked me on the idea of engagement. If the kids are with you, if they're actually engaged, you can teach them just about anything, and you'll see that in their interest and their performance. So it's not rocket science. It really comes down to people being people. All these pictures here are on the slides, and I brought 6 or 7 slides, are various things we've done over proof of concept testing to make sure that networks and the equipment that we were going to use would actually be something we could do globally. We can bring content in from various areas and various venues. So they could be from, this one here is from the this electron microscope, right, at Georgia Tech. Our partnership was with Barrow County Schools as lead on this, and I want to say something about that we have a university that lets us run lead on the project. I'm not sure if that's the norm or not. It didn't feel like it. It felt like we were very welcome, and when we had an idea, we were allowed to run with it. And so I would invite anyone out there that has an idea to go ahead and talk with these universities on a one-to-one basis, because I think the relationship between universities and K-12, particularly with networking, now that the geography isn't in your way anymore, is in flux. It's not what it used to be. And so there's opportunity there to establish new relationships and new ways to get along and new ways to do things. So Apple is in here as well, and unless you've been living under a rock for a while, they've got this thing called the iPad. And one of the things, if you want to engage kids, iPads is a real good way to do that. Arts Now is our elementary piece for this, and they specialize in bringing that engagement level into mathematics through music, and very effective program to get that interest level up in students. And then the Findings Group is a group of PhDs they specialize in preparing evaluation of grant proposals, and specifically in STEM. So if you're looking for someone to help with that evaluation piece, these guys are professionals, and that's what they do for a living. The grant has essentially 5 elements in it. The first is the D2D course enhancements. And a D2D course enhancement is essentially we put high definition video conferencing gear inside an active frontline laboratory, and we put a mobile cart inside a school, and these are 55-inch TVs with high definition video conferencing gear, wireless microphones for folks and that sort of thing. And we connect the classroom directly to the frontline lab, and where there are similarities in what the course material has and the research of the lab, we leverage those to bring kids into, we add relevance to science, and we bring in a hands-on type project to actually let them say that, look, scientists are just folks like you. Wouldn't you like to be a scientist? Isn't this a great job? And so for 3 years, we've been doing proof of concept testing on this, and I'll have just a really short video clip at the end that'll show you some of this. We also want a dedicated teaching and learning network. We want it be very much like Facebook, if you would, only it would be dedicated for science teachers, mathematics teachers, and they would be able to collaborate across our district, or, well, as you know, everybody's global now, you can collaborate with anyone. But rather than based on the high definition gear, that's very important for what we're doing, because if you're going to read scientific dials on equipment and things like that, high definition is the only thing that'll do it. You can't do this in the legacy gear of distance learning. And so the teaching and learning network, we needed to be able to take this information and have teachers come up with ideas, that little stroke of genius you have, and to be able to do it with little regular cameras, just like you'd use on Skype or something of that nature. But this would all be dedicated, all of it will have all the materials that they develop so they can share, and eventually once it's secure and we know what we've got in our hands, it'll be open for student projects as well, where they'll store their material, and there'll also be an archive of copyright-free material here, music, things like that they can download in a safe environment. The Arts Now integration, as I've already spoken earlier, is essentially a blending of the arts into mathematics. And what we're looking for there is, of course, to make, by the time they get to middle school, we don't want them already burned out on math by having it drilled into them. We want an acceptance of math. One of the things an example of that, for example, if you were trying to teach reading, we know that you can put that on a computer, and pretty much the computer can help a great deal in reading. You can even do it with telephones nowadays. But if you're trying to get a love of reading, you do better with some comfy pillows and a good teacher in a classroom reading stories that kids love. So that's basically the premise. Very high tech, what the kids want in middle and high school, and a very humanistic approach at the elementary level. Creation of original digital media. One of the things that we're doing is everything we do is recorded. When there's a video conference, there's a recording that has both sides on it. So there's the professor in the lab, there's the kids in the classroom. All of it is recorded, and the kids can download that into their iPad 2s and then eliminate the classroom, insert themselves in there if they want, and interview the professor by reimagining and reinventing these events that take place. And so, again, they'll look on the internet, they'll look for similar things, and they'll own this. They'll reinvent it, and it'll become a term paper or a science project. And again, the measurement and evaluation piece is done, and I'm not an expert in that. We do have our instruction side of the house working on that piece along with the findings group. What we actually do here is the enhancements are about 40 minutes apiece. And over a course of a semester, there's 3 or 4 of those. So what we do is we send a teacher to the program at Georgia Tech called the GIFT program, and it's essentially a 6-week fellowship. They work in the lab, they take their textbook with them and other associated materials, and they work with the teacher, the scientists side by side, and they look for those common things that where the real science is coming right out of that textbook. One of the things, and if you're in a chemistry background, you might appreciate this, but one of the ways you can do that, for example, is on meters and some of the equipment. We have a nanotechnology where they grow these carbon nanotubes is one of the projects, but that's done in an oven, and all the oven settings have to be set up and various gases run through it. So guess what? How do you get the volume of a gas and that sort of thing? Those formulas are right in their chemistry book. So they take it right out, put it on the lab, and they use those type of things to show them that it is relevant, what they're learning, and that it does mean something. And so these are created and then delivered. This teacher goes back to the school, and then these are delivered on a scheduled, when the course approaches that subject area where this is relevant, then these events take place, and we pull them into the lab. Over the course of the grant, I'm sorry, I do have another piece here. What happens also at the district level is we have a professor on one end, the teacher, the first teacher with the Superman with a T there, super lady with a T. She is the one who attended the fellowship. Then we do a team teaching there where she gets another teacher involved over the teaching and learning network. We want these teachers to be very, very, very comfortable in that, learning to collaborate and get away from the sage on the stage and start team teaching and that sort of thing. And so that happens at the district level, and since most of these classes have 28 students in them, that's where the 56 comes from. So one scientist can make an impact on 56 children's lives with this, and so it's a pretty good math equation. Over the course of the program, or of the proposal, we'll create 9 of these. 3 teachers each summer going in, and so each course, the course on the top is the high school or the middle school course. The next line underneath that would be the type of scientists that we're hooking up there. And then, of course, the course number and all that's for the scheduling and events to take place. And so as you can see, we're covering a pretty good chunk of the curriculum here. All of these will be aligned with the GPS. These are not tours of the lab. These are, when the kids are doing this, they are on task. If they're tested, the test questions are going to appear from the work they did in this project. So these are very distinctive things. All of it's done in high definition, again, with the 55-inch screens, because the idea, this is where these kids live. They're screenagers. And so we look at them and say that let's approach them on that level. And so right now, without it, we're essentially saying, leave your life at home and come in here and pretend to be somebody you're not, and slow down to a snail's pace and let us teach you something. So it's addressing a lot of these things that we know are problems, and it does it in a very elegant way that brings together the universities, the research, and makes science relevant. The dedicated teaching and learning network, again, this is a Facebook-style collaborative working environment. The teachers will have input into this. So this is not just the Facebook, even though I know they've added video conferencing, a rudimentary to that. This will be able to have 9 or 10 teachers online at a time on a team. They'll bring up a version of PowerPoint that lets them work on the same slide at the same time, that sort of thing. All of their work will be automatically saved. So there's a lot more going into this, and they'll design those components that they feel are the most useful over the course of the 3-year period. That, of course, can be scaled up statewide. It can be scaled district-wide. The iPads. Well, again, what we wanted was a handheld device that the kids could have and take home, and be able to work on this media, and stay in the digital media world as much as possible after the events take place, after the actual enhancement takes place. So again, every student that attends a course has the iPad assigned to them while they're with the course. The iPad is assigned to the course, not just every student in there. That pulls kids into STEM courses because it's the coolest thing going on in the school. What we're looking for is, if we were doing this everywhere, you'd have a completely different set of headlines going on about Georgia education. If you're trying to bring advanced companies into here, biotech firms and that sort of thing into your state, you couldn't do a better thing than connect that next labor pool directly to frontline science. So I think we have the very seeds of developing that type of expertise, next generation collaborative teaching and learning, a tech-savvy labor pool, and really redefining what a world-class education is, because education is on the verge of globalization, just like the economy. You'll be able to educate anywhere, anytime. Dream big. That's the message that we really hope to extend out here. I think if our leaders dream big, teachers start dreaming big, the kids won't be able to help themselves. Of course, they'll dream big. And I think that's what all of this is really about, is to get them excited, bring them back into the educational thing and make it work. And so we would encourage everyone to let your imagination soar. Don't say no to yourself. These folks will do that for you if it's necessary. But put down what you really think is going to work and express yourself. Don't say no to yourself. Think big. I wanted to put this up for a few minutes because, again, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the findings group. You don't have to hire them or anything. They're very good over the phone to help you come up with various ways. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Sure.
In thinking about putting teachers in the research labs, have you thought about including a student or two to accompany the one or two teachers in the Georgia Tech research lab to make the impact maybe sort of the same they get at some levels of college preparedness and interest in taking that interest in the STEM into maybe interest into one Georgia Tech or careers?
Absolutely. We're approaching it from a different perspective, but the same thing is, the analogy we use is that if you're in football, the college sends a coach out to look at your folks. Here, these scientists are peering right into your classrooms, and they do pick the best and the brightest. That's why kids are starting to come up from Georgia Tech, and they already know a professor that they want to be a grad student for. And so it does allow them to spot talent, and it does have a second benefit of that.
If I could follow up on that a little bit, you don't get a good sense of what's going on in the classroom here, but the professor is really interacting with the entire class. The class is using the electron microscope. We built an interface to the microscope to the video conferencing, which the professor now uses to teach his own classes because you can't get 30 people around the tiny screen on the microscope. The students actually build carbon nanotubes out of the carbon nanotube foundry, and then when they come to Georgia Tech to visit, they see what they've built. And so,
But yes, students, and Georgia Tech regularly brings students in through other programs as well. But it's a very good question, and we do think that the idea that teachers teach and kids learn is sort of giving way to we're all in this together, particularly at the high school level when kids are really young adults and they would rather be treated that way.
Can I just make a comment to your question? I'm Susan Reinhardt, and I run the biz program for the University of Georgia. But I ran to Georgia Tech. I do it in partnership with Georgia Tech. It's clearly Georgia Tech's program. Georgia Tech is taking teachers and letting them bring, after they've been in the gift program 1 year, they are letting them bring 3 or 4 students for just exactly what you described. And the Siemens Foundation is funding that, so that these kids will then go ahead and compete in the Siemens competition, and they have some great results. But I'm glad to talk to them about it.
One of the things.
That's one of those, hey, y'all.
One of the things I would like to point out, and as Ron mentioned about, it is the network. I am going to deviate just a little bit from this presentation, and I'd like to say everything is just my own opinion. There are no good deals in bandwidth in America. There's just variations of bad deals. We pay like 300% more than almost any other country out there that has bandwidth available. So we wanted to show what education could look like on the other side of the bandwidth barrier. Georgia has a state education and research network. Barrow County Schools is the only school district on it. When we started this, we were able to get Ware on it. Hall County's coming on this year, and I think Gwinnett's looking at it very strongly. But you can't do this with just normal internet, so let me put that out there. But we hope that it will serve as a draw and a community draw, that there's things happening, and the network is the foundation for these things. Just like how much time you spend shopping and doing other things on there, that's where to put your attention. If you don't have a good network, when we started, we were turning off the internet in some schools so we could do online testing in others. we have the fastest K-12 network in the Americas. Well, at least we can't find anybody that's got one. And the way we determine that is dividing how much bandwidth we have by how many students we have, and what's the bandwidth per student. And under that simple calculation, we haven't found anybody with a. So there's no jitters. There's perfect clarity. It's like watching an HD movie on your TV set. So it's an incredible experience, and it's not a little thing in a web page. It's a full screen, high definition experience, and it's going to be commonplace very, very quickly. I wanted to end by just showing you, if I can. I'm sorry, I don't use laptops. I have a movie in here, and this is it's like 2.5 minutes. We have done, as we worked 3 years on proof of concept. We were at CERN. We've done video conferencing with them. We've been in Australia. We've been in all kinds of places, and I wanted to take just 2. The first one is one of my favorites because it was what happens when everything goes wrong. We were wanting to share telescopes with Australia because it's nighttime there and it's daytime here, and we said, okay, we'll give you one of ours if you'll give us one of yours, and that's actually operating now. But on this day, it was raining, or when it was nighttime here, so they couldn't open up the observatory and use the telescope. And they had a very bright group of girls in Australia at a private school that had a lot of questions. And so we have a tap dancing scientist, and it was magic, honestly. So anyway, I wanted to show you that. And the other one was we believe that universities aren't the only place that good source materials where you find it. And so we wanted to see if we could go underwater at the aquarium and teach from inside the tank, not on top of it, but in it. And so a little bit of that. Do you know what?
As they do a little bit of searching, I just want to take this opportunity, because there's probably no better time to say this, is Barrow did an excellent job. Aside from of course they had an infrastructure in place, and they had this extreme bandwidth that allows them to do some of the high-tech things that they're doing. But the low-tech components that they had in their project proposal, the incorporation of iPads and those types of things, they did an excellent job of seamlessly integrating them into the overall mission and vision of the project. iPads for everyone, I'm sure it couldn't hurt, but unless you can give a strong rationale for how it helps, then it's not an integral part of your project. So that they're the example to point to on how to really integrate technology meaningfully into your proposal.
Can I see me?
Yep.
Woo! Hello! Hi!
Hello.
Okay, well, I was watching this program the other day, and all the planets on the inside, the inner planets, they're all like terrestrial, and they're relatively small, and they're like rock, and the outer ones are all gas giants. But I was watching this program that in a couple of stars away or so, scientists discovered this star had planets that there was this one planet that was a gas giant, but it was about the spot, I think it was of Mercury. I don't quite get how it's possible.
Yes, that's what's surprising everybody. Those that are finding other planets around other stars, and they're up to like 350 or so now that have been identified. We can tell that most of those planets are very massive. They're like Jupiter in mass, but they're very close to the stars, like where Mercury and Venus would be. And if you take Jupiter and move it to where Mercury is, Jupiter would evaporate. And so we know that we have rocky planets like the Earth, we have gaseous planets like Jupiter, but these other planets that are being found, we haven't figured out how they can be so massive and yet stay so close to that star. So that is one of the topics that young astronomers are going into. That's a field that a lot of astronomers are working on.
Why would the sun wobble with the larger planets?
Our sun actually wobbles because of Jupiter. So when you have something that's that massive, if you think about it, Jupiter is the largest, most massive planet in the solar system, right? So if you have two massive bodies, they're pulling on each other, And the sun pulls on Jupiter a lot more than Jupiter pulls on the sun, but there is that small pull anyway. So as Jupiter goes around, it's tugging on the sun as it goes around, and so the sun is sort of wobbling because as Jupiter goes around, it's pulling on it like this. So the same thing with those other planets, except that these planets are much larger than Jupiter, and they're also much closer. So that tug is stronger. So we can detect that little tiny wobble on the star.
This has been great. I mean, this is amazing. I'm talking to you guys, and I'm about 12 feet underwater right now in 164,000 gallons of water. It's not every day that I get to do something like this.
I was just wondering if you had developed an attachment to any of the fish that you work with.
The answer to that question is yes. One of the animals that I hold true to my heart here at the aquarium are our baby zebra sharks. What's really cool about the baby zebra sharks is that those egg cases were collected from Ocean Voyager by the adult zebra sharks. And they were given to me, and I actually was able to hatch them out and raise them. They're about a little over a year old now, and they're probably about 8 times the size they were when they hatched. So I love them. They're my babies. I've had so much fun getting the opportunity to watch them hatch out and grow. So yeah, I definitely say I have an attachment to those animals.
On TV, sometimes they show people riding the manta rays. Do you ever get to ride the manta ray?
No, and I don't think I would want to because our manta ray, Nandy, she swims pretty fast, so I don't know if I would be able to keep up with her and be able to hang on. She'd probably knock me off. I hear you, Kim. Okay, copy that. I'm sorry, guys, but I have to go.
Thank you again so much, Amy. We really appreciate it. It was great.
All right, bye. Take care.
We could show you these things all day. They all are about like that. And so that's pretty much our presentation. And I guess turn it back over to Lauren.